So usually during this time, we talk about what we think is going on with your pain and recommendations for treatment. But before we do that, first let's talk about how pain works in the body in general. Um, so in order to really kind of talk about this, I'm going to draw a little drawing. Now I will say I'm not an artist, obviously, but hopefully the visual will help kind of put some of these concepts together. Now this is just a random person, and that is his brain. Now let's say he's walking along the beach and he steps on something sharp. What happens? Well, we have nerves all over our body, and part of what nerves do is send a message to the brain when there is some sort of damage or danger to the body. So the nerves send a message to the brain that travels up through the spinal cord to the brain. And when the brain processes this message, we experience pain. Now, why do we experience pain? Pain does not feel good, but it actually provides a very important purpose. It protects our body. So again, in this case, if he steps on something sharp, if he doesn't feel pain, he might just continue walking. His wound is going to get dirty, probably infected, and this would not be good. But because he feels pain, he will look at his foot, clean up the cut, put on some medicine and a bandage, and everything will be fine. Now this is an example of what we call acute pain, or fairly short-lived. When the pain messages are being perceived in the brain, there are different areas of the brain that are involved. There's a part of the brain called the sensory cortex, and that's involved in our senses, what we see, hear, smell, and touch. And the sensory cortex helps us understand what is happening in the moment so we can respond. So again, in this case, if he's walking along the beach and he feels a sharp pain in his foot, he might automatically think, I stepped on a seashell or a piece of glass. Versus if he was at his home walking in the living room and felt the exact same sort of pain in his foot, he would not think seashell or piece of glass, most likely. He might think somebody left out the Legos or whatever it would be in your house. Another part of the brain that's involved in processing pain is the motor cortex. When we have pain, we instinctively react to it. In this case, he's going to bring up his foot. Another part is where we feel emotions or experience emotions. It's very natural for when people have pain to feel kind of irritable or cranky or mad. And part of that might be because pain does not feel good. But we also believe there might be an evolutionary aspect to that, where when we have stronger emotions during an event, we're more likely to remember that. And that also brings us to memory. It's important that we remember painful experiences, because if we didn't, we wouldn't learn from them. So in this case, the next time he goes to the beach, hopefully he will remember what happened, and he might wear some shoes, or maybe he'll be more careful as he's walking around. So again, this is acute pain, and an interesting thing that happens is once the brain figures out that the body is safe, it can actually turn off the pain signal. And that is through a process called descending modulation. So you may have had this experience before where, say you're cutting up some vegetables or cutting up some food for dinner, you accidentally cut your finger, you feel pain. You clean it up, put a Band-Aid on, and then maybe in like 20 or 30 minutes, the pain goes away. It's very interesting because the injury is actually still there, but the brain has figured out it is no longer dangerous, it's no longer harmful because you've taken care of it. So it turns off the pain signal because the pain signal has already served its function. So this is all well and fine, we experience these painful experiences, they help us out. But unfortunately, for some people, what can happen is this pain system becomes dysfunctional and can become very sensitized. So we use this term called central sensitization. Central kind of referring to the central nervous system, the brain, and the spinal cord. And what does it mean exactly? Well, there's various parts of the pain system that can become sensitized. The nerves can become sensitized so that they are sending more and more messages about pain, even though there's no danger, there's no injury. They're sending false signals. Sometimes the communication in the spinal cord can become very sensitized, so that communication between nerves and the presence of neurotransmitters are getting larger and larger. And it's almost like people will kind of describe it like the sound is being turned up, or you might have heard the term pain amplification. And then finally, we have the brain. The areas of the brain that process pain are turned on so much of the time that they're starting to become overactive, and again, also sending signals to the body that are no longer helpful. And so that's how we're thinking about your pain, that it may have started from an acute incident, but over time has become more of a centralized process. And so in order to treat this, we need to think about looking at different types of therapies.